Welcome to Talking Tea with Auntie, where we discuss interesting topics with everyday people. And today's topic is being a black woman in America with Kiki and Magpie. And now to your host, Shining Nathan.
Hello, my loves. This is your gay auntie, Shining Nathan, and welcome to another episode of Talk and Tea with Auntie. As always, I'm excited to have all of you here to sit and enjoy a wonderful topic. And in honor of Black History Month, we're going to be discussing being a black woman in America. I think this will be a fantastic topic and very illuminating for all of us. And we have several sections that will be wonderful. And if you would like to ask questions of our guests on the next episode, consider becoming a Patreon on my patron on my Patreon for as low as $3 a month. Patreon.com/Shining Nathan. I'm really excited to have this wonderful discussion with two fantastic guests. So remember to turn on that notification bell, subscribe, and if you enjoy this, give it a like and comment below on what you want to hear me talk about and interview about next. Let's bring on our first guest. All right. Tonight we have Kiki. Welcome, Kiki. I'm glad to have you on the show. How are you, my love?
I'm doing good. It's freezing where I live, but I'm doing good other than that.
And how old are you, darling? Let's start off with that general question.
I am 32 years old.
32. Young.
I know.
Still younger than me. I forget sometimes that you have a full big kid job and we're adults. So tell me, my love, what part of the country are you from? You ain't got to say state or anything. You can say a general where you're from.
Yeah, I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I was raised out here. People sometimes think that I live in Seattle proper, but I don't live in Seattle proper. But if you think of the Northwest and all of the stereotypes that go with it, I kind of am that person. Like I have a Columbia raincoat and I drink Starbucks coffee. Yeah, I'm that person.
So what other typical Pacific Northwest interests do you have?
I like to go hiking.
That is fair.
Yeah, like if you ask anybody, like, what's a Pacific Northwest stereotype? Well, they go hiking and they love the rain. I'm like, yeah, that's me. Yeah.
And so were these interests you got since you were very young, or these had these evolved over the time?
You know, I hated hiking when I was a kid, but I think as I got older, I gained an appreciation of it because it meant you got to go out and be near nature, especially after living in like big cities where you don't see mountains or trees. You're like, oh my goodness, can I just go look at a mountain real quick? But I've always loved rain. And like growing up, like my family, we would travel around the Pacific Northwest and like go places during the summer, you know, back when road trips were cheap.
Yeah.
But I think that created like a love of the outdoors that I've kind of kept with me.
That's wonderful. And so when you were growing up, what else did you enjoy?
Oh my goodness. Well, I got into like pop culture stuff, and that's what my TikTok used to be about, was like pop culture. Like for example, like I was a huge Pokemon kid. I had like the poster in my bedroom of the 150 Pokemon. I knew all 150 Pokemon back in the day, and now there's like 3,000 Pokemon. I have no idea what's going on. I'm lost.
Neither do I. I don't pay attention anymore.
I'm like, the last Pokemon I remember was like Mew or Mewtwo or like Togepi. That's kind of where I tapped out. And they're like, no, there's like this like random Pokemon that's like a flower, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on anymore. And it's just, like, I don't know what's going on. But I loved Star Wars. I liked anime. But then again, like kind of with anime as well. Not that I aged out of it. It's just that life began to happen. Like I went into college, and because you're so busy in college, I kind of tapped out of watching anime for the longest time. But yeah, I got into a lot of nerdy stuff in my youth, and it was especially big because I was raised very evangelical Christian, so I think it was kind of an outlet to connect with the broader world outside of that evangelical Christian world that I was in.
And that actually leads me into my next question. And how was your home life?
It was interesting. I was adopted when I was a baby. Actually, I was adopted by two white people, and so I was raised in the Pacific Northwest in a very white community, in an evangelical church community, like as part of the evangelical church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so I think a lot of my earlier years, like my family, we talked about things like race. We talked about, that there was inequality in the country and in the world, and certain people might treat me differently. But I think that my parents, because they were white, they didn't necessarily know how to relate to the situations that I encountered all the time. Mm-hmm. And I look back at some of the things that happened in my youth where I would kind of be like, did somebody do a racism? And, the people around me who were white were like, no, that person's not racist. And now that, I'm 32, I look back and I'm like, if I knew what I do now, I'd have gone at that with a very different approach if a kid had told me that exact story. I think somebody may have done a racism.
And so what were some of these things that that white people didn't realize, but you now as a grown-up are able to be like, that's a racism? What are some of those?
Right. So I was at, I remember there was this one time, there was like a local kind of dog show kind of thing happening. And I must have been a preteen or so. I was walking around and I walked up to like these Bichon Friches. I think that's the name. Those are those little white dogs.
Yeah.
They're cute as hell. Like they like to bounce up and down, like treat please. And I'm like, I'll give you all the treats if you keep dancing. Anyway, so I walked up to them and I was just being a preteen. I was just looking at a cute ass dog. And one of the ladies was sitting there. She's like, these are very expensive dogs. And I was like, uh-huh. Right? Because you're like, okay, I assume everything is expensive. I'm like 13, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I kept petting them and she's like, no, they're very expensive dogs. And I look back at 32 and I'm kind of wish, at 32, if somebody had said that to me, I would have been like, and what makes you think that's a problem for me?
Yeah.
Why is that something you wanted to mention, that they're expensive? If you want somebody to get interested in this breed and this brand of dog, right? Wouldn't you start talking about all of the great characteristics of the breed and how supportive they are? And then maybe at the end, you're like, just as a note of warning, it can be a bit spendy to own this type of animal. But I think that overall the benefits outweigh the cost.
Yeah. So it was kind of like when it is a more subtle version of clutching your purse more tightly or quickly picking up your purse when somebody walks in of a certain demographic.
Right. What was the assumption that I could not afford this or that my family maybe could not afford this animal, right? Why was this something that you felt the need to lead with? I look back at it very differently.
Yeah. And what other oh no, yeah, 100%. I know that as well, being Hispanic, and right now I'm in my winter coat. But no, that it's something that people really don't see. And how would they have actually said that to somebody else who was also white as an initial interaction versus somebody who is Black, Hispanic, whatever. What are the instances? Have you had any of the more challenging or deeply negative experiences since from then to now that you can speak out?
Oh, wow. Where to begin, right? I think to be Black is to have a multitude of experiences, some of which, whether or not it happens in your daily life, I think things happen so often to Black people that it gets to the point where you're like, okay, is this something worthy of me, A, remembering, B, reacting to? Or should I just hold out for something that I can with 100% definality say, I know what you just did to me and what you just said, right? And so when I think back about all the things that have happened, I remember another time I was at college, I was at Washington State University. I was a WSU Coug, and I was in the student section because the footballs was happening. The American footballs was happening. And I'm standing there just chilling with one of my friends, and right behind me is this very drunk white sorority girl, and she screams, "What's up, nigger?" And I think she was yelling to like another white person. Now, here's like to this very day, it makes me kind of laugh in hindsight because she didn't see me. But what happened is I turned around and she saw me, and the look on her face was like, you know, to this day, I'm like, you messed up big time, but the look on your face was worth 1,000 words. The look of horror and how you felt was probably like, I was like, that was great to look at your face and you just realizing what you just did. You know, like, and I think maybe it's because if you look at me from behind, if I'm like wearing like a sweatshirt, maybe you don't think that I'm black. And at that time, I think I had straight hair, or maybe my hair was like up in some way, right? But it was like this moment of like, when white people are together, they act very differently, because the minute she saw me, that attitude changed and she was horrified. And, you know, like, you yelled the N-word to another white person.
Mm-hmm.
What, in this group, because it was like all surrounded by her friends and such, this was something that was allowed, I'm guessing then. If you felt safe and secure to yell that around all of these people, these were people who never would have said something or been upset that you did this, you know?
Mm-hmm. So
I think that was also kind of like this eye-opening moment of like, y'all act differently when we're not here or watching. It's something that I've actually heard from people of color who they pass as white.
Mm-hmm.
I actually spoke to somebody who they present as white, but their mother is Mexican. And they're like, the things that people will say to me about like Latina people, about Black people. And then I stand there and I'm like, my last name is like Smith or something. They're like, you know, my mom's from Mexico, right? And watching the look of horror, because they thought that I was going to be on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And not realizing that I'm also a person of color, but I present as white. And so like, that was definitely an eye-opening experience as well.
I can totally, what was the word I want to use? I have seen the same thing, because again, during winter months, I can pass-ish. My features are too, I always get, oh my God, you're so exotic. I'm like, it's the big nose, isn't it? It's the big nose, isn't it? But it is very interesting the way certain people act and say things when they think that there's not a person of color around them.
Right.
And kind of going into your time at school, how was your time at university? Did you notice, now looking back in hindsight, because hindsight's 2020, have you noticed something that was different because you are Black?
Yeah, I mean, when I first entered college, you know, I went into college with what I explained very easily as Republican conservative values. Mm-hmm. And beliefs. And like, I entered college as kind of like a conservative Republican, and I left a openly queer liberal. So something happened within that. You know, like when you go off to college, you start talking to people from other backgrounds and you start just hanging out with other people from different backgrounds, you learn things and you become a very different person. It's kind of how I explain it. But in college, you know, it was the first time that I really got to interact with a Black community. And I look back and I realize the learning that occurred. It was kind of my first full-blown interaction with other Black people. And there was a learning curve. And there were times where I would say stuff and they would be like, you know, and like some of them would not be as patient, and you know, I understand why. As a 32-year-old, I'm like, yeah, I can get why somebody's saying something silly like, well, you know, they didn't treat all the slaves badly. Like, you know, why that might elicit a type of reaction, right? But other people were like, they're like, so were your parents white? And I'm like, yeah, I was adopted. And they're like, oh, okay, so that's what we're working with here. Like, and being a lot more, having that patience that they were able to be like, now, like, who told you that not all the slaves were treated badly? This group of people. I think there may have been a motive of trying to explain that to you constantly. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Like, never questioned this. What do you mean there might have been but I think, and I look back as that being some of like the happiest years of my life because of that interaction with the Black community that I never had.
And so that is so another interesting question. Did you wear, and because we have about a minute left, did you wear your hair different pre-meeting other Black people versus after?
Oh yeah. I straightened my hair chemically. Yeah, so I used to straighten my hair chemically, and it was because of my time in that Black community that was when the natural hair movement hit the campus. I'm sure it was happening elsewhere longer before, but there was one of my friends who kind of got into it, and then they started talking about like, like, why do we change up our hair? And I saw a video from Malcolm X, and it was like, who taught you to hate your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose? And that's kind of became the beginnings. I ended up chopping off all of my hair. I had a very like, almost like right to the root cut, and I started growing it out naturally, and I've never put chemicals on it since. And that's been since maybe about 2012, so over 10 years.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, you have fantastic hair. I mean, I'm jealous. For obvious.
I love it too.
It is absolutely stunning, and I'm so glad you stopped, because I know relaxing. I'm using the right word.
Yeah,
is so damaging to your hair. So I'm glad you don't.
I prefer this over doing the chemical thing, and especially I believe there was like recently like some news came out about it causes cancer, or like a certain brand maybe causes cancer or something like that. There was a link to cancer, and I'm like, we learned something devastatingly new every day. I'm happy that I've gone the natural route.
Yeah, and it looks great on you. As it should. Well, I think we're going to bring on our next guest. I'm going to send you off to the waiting room. So I'll see you in about 15 minutes, because we have more to talk about with both you and our next guest.
Okay.
I'll see you in a second, baby. About 15 minutes. Okay. Next, we have our next guest is Magpie, another fantastic Black woman who's going to give us her insights on what it's like to be a Black woman in America. So let's introduce them on, shall we? Hello, Magpie, darling. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Enjoying a lovely evening. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited. Well, thank you for joining. So let's get right into it, shall we? How old are you, young lady?
I am a ripe old age of 36.
You're older than me?
I sure am.
Oh, ma'am. Well, you know the old adage, and I have too much certain other DNA within me to keep me maintained.
Yes. Black don't crack. I mean, I do also have like a skincare routine too, but
I have a massive one. It's tons of retinol from Mexico and then tons of moisturizer. But I love the sun, so that don't play out too well.
I don't like the sun too much. I am a natural girl.
So tell me, Magpie, where are you? What part of the country are you from? You don't got to give specific states.
Oh no, so I am an East Coaster, born and raised.
Really? And so, how do you like it?
I mean, it kind of depends. So I've lived a couple of places. I've lived on the East Coast for most of my life. I went to college in the South. I moved after college to Seattle, actually, and I lived there for a while. lot of different places. I've been to most of the United States. All the places I'm willing to go, really.
100%. So tell me about the difference in all the places you've lived and being Black. What has been the difference that you've noticed in terms of you and your you-ness?
So I think the big one was when I moved from my home state to North Carolina for college. I went to an all women's college, and it was very interesting. I encountered a couple of people who had never met a Black person before. Like, they'd seen them on TV, but I was their first, and I'm like, I'm not the darkest person. So I was just like, oh, okay. And I felt like I had to be like a representative. I was like, oh, okay, I got to be on my best behavior, because apparently I was like, I'm the first person you've ever met that isn't pale. So that was definitely an experience. It was very interesting to see, like, especially growing up as close to DC as I was, because I was born in DC, and then moving to North Carolina, which felt very different. I mean, like, half my family owns a farm and stuff like that, so like I'm not adverse to the country life, but it was just more like the way people talk to me and the way that they interact with me, I felt kind of like a spectacle sometimes. Really? Like, why do you insert stereotype or assumption people are making about Black people? And I'm just like, okay, well, I was like, I can maybe answer that question and explain to you where that stereotype comes from, but I can also guarantee you that it is not going to be, something you can apply to everybody. I think I felt like a broken record a lot of the time. And then I moved. Well,
you were their representative.
Oh my God, yeah, apparently I was just like the chairman of like just the only brown person they know. And then I moved to when I moved to Seattle, that was completely different. It's just like just in general, everyone says that people who live in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest, they're slightly more standoffish. And I think it's just more, I'm an introvert, so I didn't notice it as much. I too am just like, I don't know you. But turns out I am an East Coast introvert, which apparently is very different than a West Coast introvert, because if I'm standing in line, I'm gonna like compliment your jacket or your outfit if I think it's cute. If I'm trying to pass the time, I might talk, especially if it's like somebody I've seen a bunch of times. Like, I lived there, so I went to the same coffee shop, so I saw the same people to the point where they had my order ready before I even got there, which was nice. It was very interesting, but I did notice that the way I was talked to was slightly different. There was still just there was like an extra bit of apprehension. And I told myself it was because I have that East Coast personality and not because I was very clearly the only brown person in the room. I was just like, no, it's definitely because I'm just, a lot. And I still tell myself that because it's easier than the alternative.
Oh, yeah. Very much so. And so tell me about your upbringing. You're originally from the DC area. Tell me about where your upbringing.
So half my family is indigenous. So and then the other half of my family is Black, and my dad is Black and Southeast Asian. So I'm a lot of things, but I was raised culturally Black. I was raised in a Black household, and for all intents and purposes, Black. Yeah. Even though very clearly got some other stuff in the gumbo pot. So there was kind of that, and then my family, we were all kind of like different shades, so I just apparently didn't get any toner, and so the way that we interacted was slightly different. And then I'm also the kind of the alt kid. I was like, I'm nerdy, I listen to so much different music, I wear an obscene amount of black, covered in tattoos. I wasn't like a stereotypical, like I didn't fit into what was perceived, especially like as a millennial during that time, as what you would think a Black person was. Like even my own family said it was like, I don't act Black, or I don't talk Black or something like that. I was like, I can translate. I know what you're saying. I can't say it like that because it sounds weird when I say it, but like, I know what you mean. Like, I hear the lingo, I hear the slang, I know what's happening here, I understand. And sometimes it kind of comes out. I'm like, and I say stuff and I go, oh, yep, there's the black. Just kidding. I guess I am. So, like,
look at me.
But I was like the weird alt black kid, which there are a lot of us, but we're like little pockets. They're usually like the one that goes back to that representative thing. We're always just like
there's always one in that group.
There's just like one alt black kid, and that was it. And you're just like, well, I the world is on my shoulders. Okay, I have to do this. I was like, don't mind the single black kid walking through the game shop, spending way too much money on Magic the Gathering or buying comic books. It's like, don't mind me. This is fine. So it was very interesting. I did feel like a little bit as an outsider in my own culture sometimes, just because I didn't fit into, like, at the time, the optics that were
that wasn't on brand. And because I'm a little bit of the same way in terms of South Texas Latino Tejano culture. What does it seem made you not get that lingo or adopt that part of your culture within you?
Like, it's there. So, like, whenever I'm
Yeah,
like family,
no, it's always
I'm
there.
slightly different. Like, because, you know, they're all a certain way, so you kind of you know, like, the longer I spend with certain members of my family, like, I have a southern twang that comes out because we were like in the southern part of my state. And like, I was raised with my grandma, so I can sing any Motown and like old school soul R&B song without a problem. I know it. Me and her just dancing through it. You know, my grandma was a sharecropper, so like she was just a very hardened kind of person, but she's very sweet. I love her. So like, I could do it, but it was just the things that interest me. Like, I was the person who just wanted to read a bunch of books and write angsty poetry. so much angsty poetry. I was like the goth, the metal kid, and even though black people invented rock music, it's still like, it was weird that I would listen to it, and I didn't wear, you know, the baggy clothes, and like, even though, you know, I could sit there and sing every song from In Vogue and Sister with Voices and TLC and Salt and Pepper and all that, it still didn't matter, because like, on the outside I didn't look. It was more just like the costume, the meat suit I was running around in was like,
it doesn't fit the model that everybody wanted to fit.
Yeah, and I'm an introvert, so I kind of just wanted to be left alone most of the time. Like, my punishments were, I'm gonna take the lamp out of your room so you can't read your book. Like, those were my punishments, of just like, oh, you have to now sit in the living room with the rest of us and interact with us. You can't go hide in your room. Like, those were my punishments. Social activity and not being able to read. So I was
this whole
odd
thing
kid.
And so during your time, as you've grown from a little wee one up to being a full-fledged adult, have there been, I'm sure there have, negative instances based upon being black or being black presented, shall we say?
So many. Sad little fact of life. It is what it is, man. I think so. Like, the first time I had like a really kind of one was actually in high school. It was this same scenario twice. Great. I love it. I love a recurring theme. I'm definitely not the common denominator here. Being like the only like alt kid, and like all the other black kids in my school not really wanting to deal with me because I just didn't make sense to them. Mm-hmm. A lot of my friends were pale. I allow white friends because, you know, like, we listen to the same stuff. Like, a lot of the nerdy kids were white, so that's just how that was. We had the same interests. And I had one guy who wanted to date me, and then all of his friends got upset that he wanted to date me, and so he had to choose between me or losing all of his friends. And it didn't occur to him that maybe something was wrong with his friends. You know. And then senior year, the same thing happened where I got asked out to prom, and then his family found out about it. And we had like 3 months left in the year. Like, literally, we were about to graduate, and his parents threatened to transfer him to a different school. And I was
I
was like, do I offend? What?
You did not.
I was just this tiny, I'm 5 feet tall now. Like I was just this little slip of a person who I was just like, this just the goofy little kid who just, it didn't occur to me that there was a problem. And it was only at that point where I was just like, oh, I've seen it happen. It had never really happened to me. I gotten real lucky up until my teens. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm different. One of these things is not like me. And that was just weird. And like I said, like when I was in college, it was just like being like painfully aware that I was being othered in kind of like a, sometimes it kind of felt a little bit like a zoo animal. Because, you know, I went to it was North Carolina, all women's college, a lot of not Black people. And so I was just there. And I was just aware. You just become suddenly very aware of it, and it just felt odd because it didn't occur to me until I was like, oh, okay. And I felt like I had to be my best behavior all of the time. So like the first 2 years of college were horrible. That wasn't me. I was my actual personality. I was just like this little pocket, and I was just like, everything's fine. I'm well spoken. Hello. I'm one of the good ones. Hello.
Like you did not.
Yeah, it was so out of my depth. I didn't know what to do. It was trial by fire. It was just definitely had to figure out, like now unfortunately the internet exists and people are horrible sometimes. And I have like a really thick skin, but like I used to not. Things actually used to hurt my feelings. So I was like, oh, okay. This is fine.
I'm okay. I swear I'm okay.
I was fine. It was just like, it's okay. 10 years of therapy, we're good to go. It's like, I'm damaged, but I'm healing.
Same.
I'm sorry, I have a terrible dark sense of humor.
No, I love it. I absolutely love it. I was just trying to keep from snorting what was ever in my nose out.
My defense is humor all of the time.
Same. And people don't like it sometimes, and all the time. And I'm like, you know what? It is what it is.
You know what? We cope in different ways. This is healthier than a lot of other coping mechanisms. Take what you can.
I got this, and I'm funny, so we're gonna do.
It's like, you know what? I'm funny and I'm kind of cute. You know, I'm gonna lean with it, rock with it.
Exactly.
We'll burn that bridge when we get to it.
And so through this journey of growing up have you looked back and seen, because I know talking with Kiki, she's grown, of course, become a woman of her 30s. She's looked back and seen that was a little racist. Have you had any of those hindsight's 2020 moments?
Oh my God, so many. It's like the blatant stuff didn't happen until I was older. I'm like looking back. So like, here's the thing. Sometimes some people are just don't realize what you said. Like I made a post about it, I think a couple of weeks ago. The "what are you" question is one of my least favorite questions. It's so dehumanizing, and it's so weird. The "what are you" question. Just I'm just like, Homo sapien. Why do you care? Move on. Because I know what I look like. Phenotypically, there's some stuff going on, and sometimes people couldn't place it. There's something wrong with it, but like I would get mistaken for being someone of Latina or Hispanic descent. People would just walk up to me and start talking to me in Spanish, and I would just be very confused because I took French in high school. I'm taking Spanish now. Do it with me. But like, yeah, no, people would I remember just be sitting there. I worked in a grocery store in the deli counter, and this man just walked up to me and just started talking to me in Spanish, and I was just like, huh? And then he got mad at me because I didn't understand what's happening, and I was like, what? I'm so confused. And I don't think that one is racist as so much as more just like, you know, brown folk seeing brown folk. But like, if I tell that story to like a white person, they would get like offended for me. And I was just like, and then I would be like, no, it's fine. And they would just be like, they would shush me. Like I didn't understand what was happening. And I was like, okay, what we're not going to do. I'm just like, hold the phone, Amber, Ashley, and Amanda. I'm going to need all of you to cease the calamity that is your memories. Like I'm going to need you to calm down. Because it's not that deep. not that serious. I know what I look like, painfully aware that I pass in many places. It's fine. My blackness is not just my skin tone or whatever bits of my face. It's also like a culture. It's something I grew up in. It's the very essence of who I am to some extent. Like, I am a Black woman. I don't really care if other people don't view me as one, because you get into a lot of those. And I think that was like the stuff that, when I really look back, that was the stuff that I didn't realize was as racist, is people trying to argue like my heritage and like my ethnicity and stuff. And I'd be like, stop that. Don't do that. That's one, that's none of your business. Second of all, why? Does it matter? Yeah. Is it prudent to this conversation? I don't think so. It's like, I just, you stay in your lane and I'll stay in mine. Thank you.
Exactly. And people forget to stay in their lanes all the damn time.
But most of it was just kind of feeling like a science project, or like just like a zoo animal sometimes, of just the way in which people were obsessed with that, or just being called attractive because I'm light skinned. And I was like, well, okay, I feel gross now.
Don't touch me.
I'm like, thank you. I need a shower. And to hug my dark, beautiful sisters, because like both my sisters are much darker than me. And so like same. I could see stuff that happened to them that will never happen to me, and I'm like aware of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, it's cool, because while they have to deal with it, then those people who do that things to my sister now have to deal with me. I was like, the only people allowed to be mean to my sisters is me. Now we have a problem.
So let's have a conversation.
And I was just like, yeah, where these hands are rated E for everyone. Like, earrings come off. Let me talk to you for a second.
I just come outside. I just want to talk.
Just a little Vaseline on the face, razor blade in the ponytail. I was born in Southeast DC. Not let this fool you. I at my very core a tiny hood person. I know it doesn't look like it, and I know I don't sound like it. My mom makes jokes about it all the time, but
I think even my mom forgets it, because we grew up in the barrio of South Texas. So I have people who all the time are like, you ain't gonna do shit. I'm like, okay.
You're just like, that trend on TikTok right now where it's like the person who like is really overtly angry and hostile versus the person with actual anger management problems who is just like, I am not confrontational because I don't want to spend tattoo money on bail. That's all.
Exactly. I don't want to cop a charge. You throw the fist.
I've used all of my Lowe's gift cards. I don't need to have to go get another pickaxe and a tar. Like that pig farm in Jersey is definitely getting a little full, but we can make this happen.
And at this point, it's way too far for me. So. On that note, I think we should. This is the perfect moment to bring Kiki back on, so we can have a fantastic discussion together.
I swear, officer, it's fine.
Officer, it's fine. Kiki, darling, you are back, and we get to see your beautiful face wrapped up. There we go. Welcome back, Kiki.
Hello again.
Hello.
How was your time in the waiting room, darling?
Good. I was totally on Amazon and then on Instagram chilling out.
I was doing that earlier. Trust me. Amazon keeps trying to be my overlord. I'm like, stop telling me what would be recommended to me. It's a clusterfuck of clothing and nerdy shit. Hey,
the algorithm is getting a little too specific. I
just downloaded the Facebook, and it is way too specific. And
it's weirdly specific.
So is Instagram. And
yeah,
I don't
I didn't even know this existed, and now I want it. Dang it.
No, but I don't trust the website that it's attached to.
Very true, very true.
Real life.
So back to the discussion at hand, shall we? And I have a very interesting question. I think viewers here that are watching right now may find the answer very interesting. And I think it's something that'd be very eye-opening. What is America to y'all?
I define America as home.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually lived abroad before. I've lived in other countries, and I know people that say like, well, I want to leave America. I just want to get out. I don't want to be here anymore. And I understand that to a very big extent. I understand the desire to leave, like especially when you feel like when somebody's standing on your neck and you can't breathe anymore, that you want to get out. And yet at the same time, I think about there's so many of us that can't just leave. Mm-hmm. We have, I think, a certain level, in my opinion, of responsibility to this country. And yes, like I have privilege, I could leave again. And yet I feel like I have a certain level of responsibility to this country to try to make it better. Mm-hmm. Because there are people who look like me that can't leave. I have family who can't just leave. And I think the relationship you have as a Black American, the relationship you have, especially as a Black woman, with America is very complicated, is full of trauma and pain. And yet the definition of it is it's home.
Mm-hmm. We built this country.
Right.
Literally.
Like your relationship with your family is not easy. It is not one that is always perfect and beautiful, but it's still your family. And I don't think I could ever walk away from my identity as an American.
Mm-hmm.
So because half my family is actually indigenous, I'm just like, yeah, no, it's home. I was like, we were here first and I'm not going anywhere. I was like, my family's half Black, half indigenous. Like, no, you can do whatever. This is my home, and I'm going to try with every fiber of my being, with my dying breath, I'm going to try to make it better, or at least give my nephew, because I got no kids, give my get him a better opportunity. Like, I don't want him to have to go through the stuff that I went through, and I don't want him to have to struggle and see all the horrors. Maybe he shouldn't have to live going through a major event every week. Yeah. Just a thought. Maybe have just a Tuesday that isn't just
every millennial having Vietnam.
Right? Just there's no flashbacks. We're still in it. But yeah, I went to grad school abroad, and it was nice to be out of the country, but at the same time, I was clocked as an American almost immediately, because apparently we have a very nasal sound when we talk. So it's kind of hard to hide. Which is fine. We talk through our noses, whatever. Yeah. But like, am I proud of my country? Some of them. Some of you guys are doing great stuff. Some of y'all, okay. But it's more of the fact that this is a work in progress. We are still a very young country. Do we have the oldest Declaration of Independence? Yes. But I think that there's a lot of people who want to be proud of this country, and we've done so much, and we've come so far, and we've fought for so much, that I feel like it would just be a waste to just go, I'm done. Throwing in the tower. I did my job. I did something. I'm going to go and live off the rest of my days. I mean, if people want to do that, more power to you. I get it. There's only compassion fatigue is a thing. Sometimes you know your limits. I think for some people that's okay. But for me, it's very difficult to remove myself from this country in that way. I mean, like, I've toyed with the idea of like moving to Mexico or Thailand or something and just like teaching English and moving on with my life. I used to be a teacher, so I was like, I can do that, it's fine. But it's not home. I don't have that kind of connection to it, and I'm not gonna abandon my family, because family is very important for a lot of Black people. Like, family is that crux and like the glue that kind of keeps a little bit of our sanity together. Are we dysfunctional? Yes, but it is what it is.
Yeah, like when people say things to me and they're like, I just want to leave. I don't want to live here anymore.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. But I think about, and I'm kind of like, okay, so why do you want to leave? They're like, well, I don't feel proud to be American. I don't want to be. And the only thought that goes through my mind in these conversations is the image of the Black students in the 1960s sitting at the diners just wanting to order a sandwich, and people beating the living shit out of them. And it's like, the very fact that we're having this conversation, the very fact that I'm even standing before you with the privileges that I have, is because people who looked like me had the living daylights beat out of them for having the audacity to ask for a sandwich. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me that you're done and you want to leave. And the very fact that you're even speaking to me right now is because somebody had to be assaulted
Yeah.
to get the point across. And so it's very much this, I've decided to disconnect and go live my life freely, you know, and I'm like, do you? Like, I've lived abroad. I'm not going to sit here and like, you know, ever tell nobody don't go live abroad. Do it. It's a great experience. But your Americanness will never leave you just because you cross a border. You shall always stay an American. You shall always continue to have things within you that remain American. And you can decide to go elsewhere. You can decide to live elsewhere. That is your prerogative. It is a free world. But don't think for a second that what happens within these states is never going to affect you.
Exactly. I think so like my grandma was a sharecropper. So she's like 70, she's like 78. So like she's very much like, there's no way I could like look my grandmother who went through hell and back. And then also that half my family's fighting for just the ability to survive because as indigenous people, as their land's being stolen. And then the other half of my family is just like being treated like hot garbage 24/7 for 400 years, just because we're darker. I can't, like, my ancestors would never let me live that down. If I was just like, okay, bye. Like, I couldn't. No, like, I wasn't raised with that kind of mentality. I was, you know, the song and dance of like, women are the strongest soldiers ever because, you know, we have to be, like Black women. And it's like, I was raised by a house full of Black women. Men didn't last very long in my family. I don't know, there's a curse. But so like, I was instilled with this, and like both Black and indigenous cultures are kind of really strong matriarchies. So I'm just raised by these like strong Black women who have gone through so much and have seen so much and have told me all these things. I don't know why they told me. It's probably why I was in therapy. And it's just hearing these harrowing tales and hearing about my grandma just referencing just a horrible like racist event, just recalling it like it's nothing. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, all right.
Well,
and I don't see it as like a competition, but more of a just like seeing how far, like she's still alive and she's seen so much, like, you know, the march, she's seen, you know, she was alive during Rosa Parks, like she just stuff that happened, these major events my grandmother witnessed and was sometimes a part of. I mean, like finding out like half my family are activists, they were activists like back in the day. I was just like, oh, dang. So it's humbling sometimes, and it also feels like I got to do my part to like keep that train going of leaving the world better, or leaving at least some portion of it better than the way I found it. And sometimes that just means sticking around and showing that not everybody in this country sucks and we're not all crap. Because I remember when I was talking about being a representative, ironically, this is the dual end of the other side of that, of being a representative for the country, of showing that we're not all horrible and that some of us do want to make progress and do care about it. And so the only way you can do that is not by running away from the fight. Maybe take a break, sure, you know, take a sabbatical, have a vacation, recharge, come back, keep the line moving.
Yeah. And so to people who are watching right now who in their mind are allies or want to be better allies or help the BIPOC community, what advice would both of you give to be a better ally to the Black community, to the BIPOC community in general?
Open your ears and close your mouth. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry.
What would I say? I would say that allyship only goes so far. Because allyship requires you to sit down, be quiet, and listen. And that's great.
It's a start. It's a start.
Right. But also, if that's where you want to stop, is sit down, be quiet, and listen, you also have to be honest with yourself in the reality that you are also saying, but I have no desire to put any level of myself on the line for another person. I just want to learn. I don't want to ever risk anything of mine whatsoever for another group who's experiencing discrimination and inequality. And if you wish to be masked off about that's what you're willing to do, then so be it. But I think that you need to also take into consideration that if you truly want to be an ally, part of allyship is moving from ally to accomplice.
I was about to say, there's a big difference between an ally and an accomplice. An ally is going to listen and maybe share something and whatever, but an accomplice is standing next to you, right?
Mhm.
And in front of you, not to like talk over you, but to help protect you, to put themselves not in harm's way, but to understand that they're going to put them inconvenienced in some way, that there is a level of discomfort in being an accomplice. And allyship, it's a kind of cushy place. It's a place that most people, you got to start somewhere, and I always prefer people to start as allies, simply because people who start as accomplices first tend to not have had enough time to listen and be perspective, and then they become this like chaotic gremlin that thinks that the way to solve everything is with like hostility or just like this. And you're like, okay, all right, just dial it back a little bit, and maybe listen to the plan that we have and the needs that we have first, and then take that going. It's kind of like you got to listen to us first to understand what the issues actually are, the pain points are, what we need, and where the progress we've already made. Because a lot of times they'll assume and then do all this extra work that's already been done if you just supported the groups and the organizations and the movements that were already in place and already making headway, instead of trying to do it on your own. And I think that's why I feel like people should start as an ally first and listen and understand the perspectives that have already been established and researched, and then move into wanting to make action. Because action without information, action without knowledge or an understanding is just a recipe for disaster.
I fully
That's
agree.
just my perspective.
Oh no, I agree with both. I 100%. And like, the funniest thing was years ago, because during the winter months I am paler, and I have friends who are also Latino, but they're darker. I remember one time it was outside the gay bars in Houston, and there was an issue, not with our friends, but they were assumed to have been part of the issue outside the bar, and the cops started coming up to them and started harassing them. And so I knew it is December. My skin has not seen sun for about 2-3 months. And so I went to, excuse me, officer, is there a problem? And he just looked at me, because my friends talked very barrio. They had the hardcore South Texas accent. And so he was already being antagonistic instead of listen. So I'll come up, hi, how are you? Is everything okay? Oh, these are my friends. We're just going to get ready to go home. And the attitude completely changed. Because there I am, paler, because they are obviously moreno. They are very, very, very dark.
Yeah.
And they're speaking in the barrio type of lingo, which I speak when it's just me and them, but I code switched so quick. Excuse me.
The code switch, it's a lifeline. It's so necessary. I mean, I've had to use my light girl privilege many a time. like, oh, I'm so sorry. I totally understand, and I'm so sorry. I was like, I'm just gonna go, and we're really sorry we disturbed you. You guys have a great day. Because I'm like, I don't want to get into a fight right now. Like, it's not worth it. Like I said, we do not spend tattoo money on bail. I can't be in these streets. I got cats to feed and a job. Like I got student loans to be paying off to the day I die. Can't do that if I'm in jail. So, you know, sometimes I've had to, especially because like, even though I grew up in Southeast DC, I, you know, get a code switch, especially when you start seeing red and blues. You're like, oh, okay. the most customer service voice ever. Just big old doe eyes as much as you can. Just
it helps that we're smaller, I think, too.
Oh yeah, being tiny and adorable, I'm painfully aware of that. Like I do have like that's a weird little superpower I have, is like I'm very unassuming, so which is fine.
I have a name that presents as I say that my name presents as white. My government name presents as white. And so through email, through like if you're on the phone with me, this is literally how I talk. And people sometimes assume that I'm a white woman.
Oh yeah.
And it's always really funny for me to like show up in like a meeting, and they see the name and they see me and they're like, but how?
Oh yeah,
like,
they don't know.
I know,
I get that
right?
they don't know you
How-
black until you show
how
up.
did-
They're
how
always
did I
very
get in
confused.
here with that name? How did that occur, right?
I feel like a lot of millennial black kids went in either two camps. Either your name got aggressively blacker, or you were white on paper.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I got the white on paper. My name
Me
is
too.
so stereotypical that you don't realize that this is what you're getting when I
Yeah.
show up. And I've actually had people be like, "You are not what we were expecting," and I was like, "You can just say you didn't know I was black. It's fine." I was like, "I prefer that actually. Let's be real here. Let's be honest, please. This is making me uncomfortable." I mean, like, 'cause my customer service voice is like very like I used to work at Nintendo, and I'd be getting hit on over the phone by men in Tennessee because I'm just like, "Thank you for calling Nintendo. This is Brittany. How may I help you?" So like, you know, and they're just like, "Well, hey there," and I'm like, "No, no, 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 no." Like negatory.
No, it's really.
It was just,
yeah.
you know, weird stuff like that.
I have a voice that I use. I definitely use, and I'm like, people are like, "Did it?" and they're telling me, and I'll be on the phone, like my speakerphone in my office, and I'll be like, "Yeah, that sounds fantastic. You know, go ahead and we'll just table that conversation for a bit. We'll wait for Brittany to get back to us tomorrow, and then we'll touch base around Friday. Does that sound good to you? Okay, have a good one." Click, and then I turn on like the Biggie music, and I'm like,
It's just like night and day.
And so, can y'all explain to
I
people?
could do the voice with like a straight, like just a straight laugh. Be like, "Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So how about we just go on?" And I'm like, and then like after I finish, I'm like,
Necessary
So, to
evil.
people who don't know, can y'all explain what code switching is? Because I'm pretty sure there's going to be people who do not know that BIPOC people do a thing called code switching.
yeah,
Code switching, along with being a survival tactic, is basically when you move outside of your normal cadence, vernacular, just the way in which you talk, because African American vernacular English is its own dialect. I've written whole papers on this because I have like a minor in linguistics because I'm that kind of nerdy. And it's just this adjustment to what is the Western American, very stereotypically white sounding kind of speech, which people tend to talk as like proper, or sometimes in business settings there's like a
It's very professional.
be professional or speak well, and so because slang and that sort of like that cadence is sought to be like less intelligent, and so to survive in society and to continue to get jobs and loans and stuff, you kind of have to, and not go to jail, you have to recognize when you need to switch out of how you normally talk with like your own culture and your own people and your own family and your own friends to the, I mean, like everyone does it to some extent. Like everyone has like the way they talk to their friends versus the way they like talk to their boss or like a teacher or like an authority figure. But for BIPOC people, it's a life or death a lot of times, but also it's a necessary thing that you learn uncomfortably early.
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you mess it up. You switch things up accidentally.
Shit,
Switch too soon.
No, like Magpie said, when you're talking about linguistics, there's something called General American English, and this is the quote unquote overall, the grammar that you're taught in school. That's the way that I explain it. The grammar that you're taught in school, like this is how you write an essay. This is how you speak to another person and communicate effectively. We're taught General American English. But then if you start to break down American English, you get things like Southern American English, Pacific Northwest English, California English, and then you'll get socio dialects like African American Vernacular English.
Tex-Mex.
Yes.
Baltimore is its own language. We don't believe in half of the consonants, really.
I was talking about like, even within African American vernacular English, you can tell where somebody is from.
Oh yeah.
Like I can tell when I'm talking to someone who's from New York, And I can tell when I'm talking to a Black person from California, they sound very different. The dialogues, the
slang
cadence,
is different.
vocab, they use very different.
So different.
Right, but like you can mess up code switching, and I think all of us have done it at work in some retrospect, that maybe you say something that you'd only say to your friends. But I saw this really funny, I saw this really funny tweet, and I'm not going to do it word for word because I'm going to forget things, y'all. But it was like, this guy was like, I was at a meeting and they said something crazy about like the figures that were coming up, and I just said, really, nigga? And he's like, everybody looked at me like I was crazy, and it's the Black man, right? And he's like, I had to go get a poke bowl to take some of the heat off me and eat it in front of my computer. And I was like, I have definitely done that. I have definitely.
I've said some stuff.
I definitely let like another side of myself out, and everyone's like, "What the hell?" And I'm like,
I said a woo chow once, and someone was just like, "There's a child," and I was like, "No, okay,
like,
I don't."
Well, just communications has a problem with this wording. Well, if they got a problem, then I got the solution, and everyone's like,
I literally said, "Oh, it be like that sometimes," and they were like, "I'm sorry, what?" I was just like, "It is what it is. Leave it alone." I was like, "Mute. I'm not here anymore."
Let's just table this discussion for later.
I'm just like, I'm sorry. I feel like there is a breakdown in communication. Revisit this discussion at a later date. My calendar is up to date.
Per my last email.
Like, we're just gonna table that, and we're gonna move on. Synergy. Like,
when I discovered per your last email, it essentially means like it's corporate talk for what I said. I was like, I love that one.
I
Please
do
clarify. Be fucking for real.
I'm just gonna loop in so and so just on this next email. I'm tattling.
Yeah, literally.
Oh no, we've had that in one of my last jobs because one of my last companies was owned by a wonderful Caucasian woman, but the office manager was very Latina.
Oh,
and like from Mexico, her mom's from Mexico, Latina, and then when I'm with my own people, I talk completely different, and so her and I are going back and forth, as we're walking to the conference room for a meeting, and we sit down, forgetting to switch back, and so we're still talking like we do, and we're like, yeah, no, totally, that's fine. No, we're gonna do that. And our boss is like, what did y'all just say? Because at that point we weren't really talking in English anymore. We were in Spanish, and me and Tex mix her in Spanish, and our boss is like, what did you have to say? We were not talking about you at all. We can assure you that we were not talking about you at all. But there's so many instances, and most of her staff were Latinos. So she was like, you know what, y'all can just be like, oh, thank God. Okay, because this shit.
I work for a non-for-profit now, and like half of the staff is like Black women, which is awesome. But it's kind of like I'm surrounded by like aunties, like just aunties, and like just so many versions of my mom. So I'm just and then like half of them remind me of my grandma too sometimes. So like I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I don't know how Black I can be. But I also don't know if I have to be like talking to your Black elders Black, or talking to people who are like closer to my age, because I don't look my age. I don't look like I'm in my mid to late 30s.
No.
And I know. It's the story of my life. It's I'm sure I will enjoy it at one time. I don't right now because everyone thinks I'm like an intern or I'm like really young. And yeah, I'll be talking to people who are actually my age or like a couple years older, and they think I'm much younger. So like they talk to me like you would talk to like the younger Black people, and I'm just like, oh, okay. So you can kind of figure out sometimes, and they'll say stuff, and I'm like, I can tell how old you are, and I can tell where you were from, because that slang and that particular sentence is from a very specific group, which is fascinating. You can always kind of pick up on where people are. You're just like, oh, you want an M.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good times at Ridgemont High.
people will be very interesting. So tell me about what is both of y'all. So on a much more lighthearted topic, what was y'all's favorite cartoons? I had this listed and I want to kind of shit. What was y'all's favorite cartoons?
Favorite cartoon? Let's see. I mean, I'm gonna just be very simple and say Yu Yu Hakusho. Like when I was younger, I absolutely loved Yu Yu Hakusho.
Sailor Moon.
So both anime. Okay, so I have to ask this question. Like, Hispanics were all about Star Wars, but I have noticed with a lot of my African American friends, very big on anime, which was something I didn't get into till I was much older.
Oh,
And so I have genuine, because I was like, this is very consistent for it to not.
we did.
be
It was very
something-
Dragon Ball Z heavy. Like Naruto, Dragon Ball
Oh Lord,
Z, Bleach. Like it was very like just Shonen goodness across the board.
right.
And then like you could kind of tell like I was in my anime club in high school, so like we were watching like Fushigi Yugi and Odon High School Host Club and Revolutionary Girl Utena. I still like look when I'm having a bad day, I will put on some Odon High School Host Club because it's stupid.
It's fun.
It's so cute. It's so dumb. Like I think a lot of Black people ended up just like going like the Studio Ghibli route where we're either like really depressing stuff or like slice of life cute crap, and I think that was just it's like an escapism kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's something. It's really nice. It's super light. It's all of it's usually visually calming and beautiful. But then also if you watch Dragon Ball Z, you can guarantee there's 1 billion episodes, and for 75 of them, they're just gonna be screaming at each other.
I'm not gonna lie. It took me a while to finally get it because my first favorite anime, of course, it's why I got really into anime because I watched anime growing up, but it was very much sci-fi kid, Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate, all the stars. But then I started watching like Dragon Ball Z until I started realizing like we've just been doing this for 3 episodes.
Don't watch Bleach then. Oh my god.
Don't
watch Bleach.
You don't understand.
There's like whole seasons that are nothing. Just nothing.
I made a comment and I was like, Yu Yu Hakusho is Dragon Ball Z but with a plot.
Yes. Oh my god. Yu Yu
Hakusho
Hakusho is what you watch when you don't have the attention span to deal with a billion episodes of them shouting at each other, stuff that like this could have been an email kind of episode.
Right. Yeah,
This
but
season could have been an email.
I literally had Black men like stitching me and yelling at me and just being infuriated that I'd said this. And I was like, first of all, I was joking. Second of all, why have you decided that you are personally being attacked because your TV show with the guys who change hair color when they scream is
the Dragon Ball Z and Black men, the chokehold Dragon Ball Z had on Black men, I will never understand.
I see. I don't get it, period. But it really is because like I wound up becoming a Tenchi Muyo kid. That was my anime. I've tried finding it again. It's hard. I know it's not a very popular anime. And then Neo Genesis Evangelion. I know. I need. What? Don't finish. Don't ever finish Evangelion. Do not ever finish.
That last episode does not exist. Just don't do it.
Do not watch the movie.
Just war flashbacks.
So I'd never known that there was a movie until like 2 years ago. Until like 2 or 3 years, because I took a dip out of anime. So I was like, oh my god, an Evangelion movie, because I love anything with big beat up robots.
Oh, we
I'm
love
down.
a mech. We love a mech.
I love a mech. Pacific Rim, Gundam, next
Big O.
Gundam. Exactly.
Every Gundam.
I have to pause this and say, just everyone knows, Big O is basically Batman, but he has a mecha.
I know. I love Big O. And it was unfortunate for me. There was a point where it was too above my head for the time period I watched it. I was like, I know there's more to this,
right?
But I'm not big brain enough to think past. There's more to this.
I had to be in the mood for like a weird, quirky, slightly traumatized person being shoved inside of a machine for most of the show. Like, I had to be in the mood for going on that journey with you. Usually I just wanted my little dopey characters to just be like cute and pathetic in like just in a wholesome way, just like poor little Tink Tink is just like the little engine that could. And because like some of those shows I was just like, oh, this has got very okay.
I went back and watched some of the Gundams and I was like, I was watching this. I'm watching people being atomized.
Adult Swim, there's a lot of stuff that I should not have been allowed to watch as a child, and yet here I am.
Yeah, I mean, it explains. I mean, there's other trauma that explains most of it, but I was like, oh, because I rewatched some of the old Gundam, and I was like,
oh yeah, our shows were unhinged,
and it's like barely below blood.
They let me watch Fashuga Yugi in high school. Yes, Fashuga Yugi that has a whole plot. I was just like, when I watched it again as an adult, I was like, wait, that's the plot? How did I miss that? You showed this to.
No, you know what's really funny is I actually just bought the full series of Hellsing, like the manga Hellsing, and I remember watching the anime like back in the early 2000s, right? And I read like half of the series.
Alucard was my sexual awakening.
Right. But like I look, and as I'm going through and reading it now at 32, I'm like, this is a bit heavy for a teenager. Like, this is almost like Game of Thrones kind of level of violence.
Almost.
You know, and I was like,
the anime was so bad. It was just like he got ripped to shreds. Just nothing.
It's not monitoring me when I got a hold of this.
I mean, I guess maybe that's why I wasn't as fazed by like Attack on Titan when it came out. Then I think about it.
Yeah, when I watched a little bit of it, and I won't lie, I'm sure I get crap every time I say it. I could not get into Attack on Titan. I tried so hard, and I just couldn't care about the tiny little white people who kind of uncomfortably reminded me of a very particular group, and I just couldn't. With the giant naked people walking around, like I couldn't do it. It was just maybe it's the demisexual.
For me, it was like it was close enough to mechs. I don't know. I got into it, but I also am like, give me something with a big wall. Not the one we're thinking. Not the other one. With a big wall and a big door that shuts. And I'm like, oh. I don't know. I haven't finished it, and people say I should. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like Hellsing kind of like primed me for some things that later in life that I was like, yeah, I'm into this. Like Castlevania on Netflix. I was like, really into
Castlevania. That show is, I don't know why it's near to heart.
Now, what do you think brought you to this point that you're liking Castlevania? That I was like, it was Hellsing. It was
definitely Hellsing.
Honestly, I'm not gonna unbox some of my stuff. So let's take a quick foyer to my patrons. We have 2 fantastic questions from my patrons. And for the people watching and listening, if you want to ask questions of our guests here on Talking Tea with Auntie, you can become a patron on Patreon for as low as $3 a month at patreon.com/Shining Nathan. So let's get into our 2 fantastic questions. They're actually really brilliant questions. First one comes from C. Nikki on my Patreon, and it is, how or where is your dating life, and have you experienced and have you been able to find love?
Tackling, you can go first.
I mean, like, my dating life is sad somewhat. I'm half joking. There is somebody that I've been hanging about with, but I can't go into many details because I don't want them to be pulled into the spotlight. But you know, in the way of dating, for the longest time, I honestly just thought that I was ugly. I kind of figured that I was ugly because I never really.
You're beautiful. Stop.
I never got attention growing up from boys.
You come over to the East Coast, you'll be all right.
It was around a bunch of little white boys, right? So they were all like right over their heads. And then I went to college and I found people who were attracted to me, and I was so confused that people were attracted to me. And it's to the point even now at 32 that if somebody finds me attractive, I've started telling people, like, if you like me, you need to say it and spell it out.
Be blunt.
Because I will never read that you're attracted. I will read it as you're just being polite to me. Because when you've lived a long enough of your adolescence with nobody being attracted to you, you read everything as politeness. And so people were like, I was flirting with you. And I was like, then why the fuck did you just not say that you were interested? I can't do these games. You need to tell me.
Be as subtle as a hammer, please. Thank you.
Like as a sledgehammer. That's how subtle
Please,
I need.
Just I write it. I need a skyscraper that says, I think you're cute.
And honestly, this was actually a question from somebody else who's African American. So I think they were trying to show kind of Kiki what you were saying.
Yeah, I had a slightly different. So I'm on the asexual spectrum. I'm demisexual. So I never notice when people are attracted to me, because I go into every interaction, regardless of how pretty you are, is friendship. Like, that's all. I'll look at you and be fine. I'll look away, come back and be like, oh no, they're hot. All of a sudden, just like out of nowhere, just like, oh, and they're attractive now. When did that happen? I now have a crush that I don't know what to deal with. And I'm like super awkward. So like all of my dating history was just me collecting this weird little harem of like hot nerdy boys. I just had this collection of just like weird hot nerdy boys who just didn't realize they were hot, which was great for me, because I had to do very little. I had to do very little. The bar was so low. I breathed. And so like I don't take compliments very well, so anytime anyone calls me attractive, I'm just like, anyways.
That's great, thanks.
It makes me uncomfortable. I still don't know what to like kind of do with it, but I'm married. I have been with my husband for we dated for like 8 years, and we celebrated our 1-year marriage last year.
Congratulations.
He's my best friend. So yeah, I had a friend, and then one day I was just like, no, you're cute. And then I had to like figure out how to translate that into dating, which by the way, not very easy when you have like, solid friendships and you have to be like, am I going to ruin this and maybe get some smooches, or am I going to ruin this and have to find a new bestie? So, I got lucky, but it was a very long, arduous process, and that just how that one panned out. But most of my dating history was tumultuous and fascinating. It's lots of weird stories that I will happily tell you guys off of this podcast.
I actually want a full dissertation written on both y'all's stories.
Happy to.
I'm expecting them
and everything.
In single space and full dissertation as well.
All right. MLA?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Annotate everything.
I'll send it through Grammarly a couple of times. It'll be fine.
Perfect. I will check for plagiarism as well.
Oh no.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
It was a Saturday night in a dive bar in
Kiki.
North Carolina.
Call me Kiki. Kinky or Kiki?
Huh?
Kiki or kinky? Which one of those?
I mean, why not both?
I mean, we've seen how you fawn over Bane.
It's yeah. No, it's
I think perfectly healthy obsession.
I've had some Bane cosplayers in my DMs, like, because they saw my videos and they were like, "So you like Bane, huh?" And I'm like, "Don't tempt me with a good time, sir."
You know what?
Like,
I love that for you.
I love that.
I love that for you.
Yeah. I'm like, with a good time here. Like,
I say get your good. Honestly, that's just my opinion.
You know what? I'm not yucking anybody's yum. You know, like if that is your apple scrapple, let it be.
funny, and I'll say this, and like, because I apologize in advance if there's any little kidlets running around, and they see this, but I discovered there is a Dark Knight Rises porn parody.
Oh yeah.
I may or may not have viewed this multiple times. I will not go on the record and say whether or not I have, but I discovered that it exists. It has Bane in it, and I hope my boss never sees this.
That's amazing. You know what? It's healthy. I don't care. It's perfectly fine.
I'm keeping it together. I'm not judging.
Like I haven't written a fan fiction for
enjoyed...
12 in my life about some character that I like obsessed over. Like, I'm demisexual. I'm not dead.
I will neither confirm nor deny some of the media I have consumed in my lifetime. So we will delightfully move along. don't look at my browsing history. Our next question is from Matt Skaggs, and his question is actually pretty wonderful. Any advice for other women of color trying to enter the workforce or become some form of influencer? What type of advice would y'all have?
I'm not an influencer. Oh God, I hope I don't influence anybody. I'm a mess. I feel like manage your expectations. You're going up against algorithms that are not your friend, against people of the global minority who are going to take what you say and just regurgitate it and get way more views than you. There's literally a guy on TikTok who just takes all of the weird cultural things that Black people do and just does them, and he has so many followers, and I don't understand it. Thankfully,
I saw that.
It's so weird, and I'm just like, well, first of all, who told? And but second of all, like,
you know
sir,
someone.
like
you know someone.
Jokes. I want to know who's airing our secrets out, because I'm just like, okay, but I feel like it's, don't try to be something that you're not, because it'll come off as incredibly disingenuous. Like, there's tons of us who talk about anti-racist stuff, but we all do it in kind of a different way. I'm not exactly the nicest person when I respond to it, but I think that's probably because you get called a monkey enough times and you just kind of you're like, okay, yeah. I'm out of nice people spoons. And so I think it's, in the influencer internet way, please have some version of a thick skin and protect your peace. Do not, like, I have so many filters on my comments now because I don't want to see it. I periodically will go into my comments and just block people. Like, I even have one for blue haired now because people just say things about my hair because I'm a feminist. Oh God, I think women are people.
How dare they?
I know, right? So like, it's just, you gotta have to be a little smart about it, but reach out, because I love Black women. We're the most welcoming people. We're just like, we love you. We want to help you. Come here. But at the same time, like, but if you're kind of shady about it, and if it feels like you're just trying to steal something instead of contributing, it can go kind of like a weird way. So I was just like, don't try to reinvent yourself. Don't try to do a bunch of bells and whistles for no reason. Be yourself. And the people who care about the message that you're trying to do and the way that you give it are either like, I could never do what Kiki does. Your crap is hilarious, and I love it. And every time it comes across my feed, I'm just like, like, and I know I couldn't do it, and that's okay. There's space for all of us, so it shouldn't, just don't try to, like, be putting elbows in. You'd be like, we'll step aside. We'll make space for you. Just,
it's a big internet.
We'll make more table. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's funny that you mentioned me. Like, I was at 230,000 followers, and I said, fuck it, I'm out. Because I just got so tired. So the advice that I'd give a woman of color would be, understand that people will hold you to insane standards that they would never bother to hold themselves or their families to. Like, I remember somebody got on my case because I had the audacity to buy a backpack with the Swan Princess. And they were like, well, you know that the creators were Mormons and that the Mormons have done awful things to the queer community. And I was like, am I being canceled over buying a Swan Princess backpack? What the hell?
I almost got canceled because I love Jack Skellington.
Right. Like, it's just like,
it's just like,
as a woman of color, people will make up rules for you to follow that they
the
never bother to
is
think
constantly
about
moving.
the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And you break the rule that they made up in their head, and they fucking lose it, and you're the worst thing that's ever happened. Or within 60 seconds, you did not cover every single nuance of every little tiny bit of this topic. So obviously you're completely ignoring my experience and my, XYZ thing. And so thus you are being this thing. And it's like, well, no, there's 60 seconds. What? You would never hold yourself to this standard. This is a ridiculous, unrealistic, unhealthy standard. But you've decided now that I am like public enemy number one because I didn't center you personally in what I have just said. Mm-hmm. And so, like with a great platform comes all of the bullshit.
Yeah.
And you will work twice as hard to get crumbs.
Oh, a pittance. Just well, maybe.
And that's kind of like, well, multiple reasons, but that was one of the reasons I also walked too, because I was like, a platform of 230,000, but what do I have? Like, what's going to be the long-term plan here? Is Paramount going to come in and offer me a deal? They haven't done that.
Hi, Paramount.
Hey, Paramount, how you doing?
We're looking at you.
Is Disney gonna come and offer me a deal, and so I am getting all of this visceral hate, and yet what is the benefit to me? Mm-hmm. And I did have benefits. I don't want to like sit here and be like that people didn't send me stuff. People did send me stuff. People did give me things, and I'm phenomenally grateful for all of that love that I received. But ultimately, be very cautious of the reality that you're going into a space where people, they love to feel like they are right. And they love to feel like they're sticking it to the man. And as a BIPOC woman, you are the perfect target for them to attack.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I had to make some very, I have like a whole like playlist of like housekeeping rules specifically because I was like, please stop trauma dumping in my comment section. I am not your therapist. And you're making people uncomfortable. The amount of times I kind of do this thing where I like will take a comment and I'll just tear it apart, but in a way, in like an academic way, I'll just look for the logical fallacies in it and explain the history of the logical fallacy and where this kind of mindset tends to come from. And I'm actively ignoring like the person themselves most of the time because I already know engaging with them is a fool's errand, and I'm not going to waste emotional labor trying to explain something that they are like actively willfully being obtuse about. But I don't have a large following, and that's on purpose. I am block happy. It's so quick. You say one, I'm like, no. You smell like trouble. I don't have time for this. You're being rude in my comment section, or you're demanding something of me. Absolutely not. Argue with your mama. Goodbye. I have like a very small following, and that's on purpose. It started to grow like uncomfortably quickly for a bit. Like I was like at like 10,000, and then I did one video in which I was explaining why Tim Burton is racist, and I did piss off a lot of people. That video from 2 years ago still gets comments. Right now, my biggest video is just me talking about Andrew Tate for like 6 seconds of just me laughing, and somehow it's gotten the most views of anything I've ever done, and I do not understand it. It's just me laughing at a Greta Thunberg tweet.
I don't even understand half. Here I am at whatever following I don't even.
Buggled. Because you are charming and you are sweet and you're interesting.
Well, no, I just mean how the thing works. Because like I did a post today about trying to.
And you're unassuming. Unfortunately, you're not you're a non-threatening looking individual. You seem very sweet and very kind. It's probably partially the Southern accent. I will say that like we all have that whole like light skin stuff. Where like we're less threatening because we have less melanin for some reason.
And plus. It's really weird, and I let the comment section deal with itself.
Oh, I can't do that.
I have learned. I let them get feral. Like somebody said something, I was like, "Oh, you said something real stupid." Somebody else will take care of that because somebody else will.
Oh yeah,
and
immediately.
And I'm like,
quickness. They'll eat themselves alive. It's terrible.
And I'm like, I didn't do shit. I didn't have to do shit. And unless it's like I can tell they were because you can't tell tone, I can tell they were meaning something or trying to learn but don't know how to pose the question on the internet without getting eaten alive. I can typically tell if I catch it. But there's been instances of I'm like, survive. And it's just
Oh, there's some I've left in there for a couple of days because I already know my comment section is going to deal with them. Eventually I'm still going to block them because I'm just like, no, because they'll go to like my Instagram or my Twitter. I had one guy who followed me to all of my other platforms for like a month, like made new accounts daily, everything. I was just like, you're a lot. This is silly.
There's a reason why you don't. There's a reason why you rarely see out these windows. Like there is a definite reason why you rarely see out these windows in any of my videos, because I'm like, no, because I had somebody in one of my old apartment complexes like, oh, we live in the same apartment complex. And I was like,
it's wild out in these streets.
It is. I
got two windows behind me. No one ever sees them. There's a reason why, like, you always just see this like blue wall, because I'm like, you don't need know nothing about me.
Bitches are thick.
I have 5 cats, so the windows are always open because they just sunbathe all the time. So like,
there's one open because she gets there, but you can't see what's out. I mean, I don't video. It's an awkward angle to where if I video it with it open, you wouldn't see shit because it faces the side of the building.
That's another advice thing. Please be safe about where you film and how you film, because some people have filmed in a way or like shared information about themselves via like showing this is my favorite place, and will casually mention how far away it is from where they live, or they'll say like, I live here in this tiny town, or I live in this tiny county. I'm like, do not give out that kind of information, because unfortunately, I think like for millennials, we're a little less likely to do it because we grew up in the, you're going to get kidnapped by some strange man in a basement.
You met off a chat room.
12-year-old girl. Like, we all remember those like after school special terrifying stories they just did and having to do like our fingerprints and whatnot. So like we kind of grew up in a kind of like fear-mongered kind of state of being very anonymous. But then you also have people who are even more anonymous, who just have no presence whatsoever other than to be a bully or a troll or whatever, but can get that kind of information, and that's when like the doxing comes in and people end up with these crazy threats. And it's strange how quickly it's funny when it's like a bad person, but it's terrifying how quickly you can find information out about a person on the internet.
People do not think like how little of information you need to actually give out to get found. Like, I remember there are people who would be like, yeah, like they'd have the name of their city, right? They'd have their full government name. And then they'd film videos of like me picking up my kid from school, and their kid is like running out squealing. And I would sit there and I'd be like, I can see the outside of the building, and I can see that it is a brick building. Your kid is about, I'd guesstimate about 4 years.
And people are like Sherlock Holmes. There's this one chick.
And I was like, okay, I could probably figure out with enough time, based on where you live, if I'm looking at neighborhoods, what school your child goes to. I know their legal name. I know how old they are, and I know what time they get out of school. I probably could figure out their recess schedule. I'm like, y'all need to pause in this desire to be popular, to be out there, to be engaging, and understand that there are people out there who do not have your best interest or protection at heart.
Let's bring back secrets. Bring back secrets.
Yeah.
And especially
too comfortable on the internet. Please bring back secrets. I don't need to know everything.
Everything in your life, that's another thing for a BIPOC woman. Everything in your life does not need to be public knowledge.
Nor does it need to be something to be commodified or consumed. Like not everything about who you are. That's what I meant when I said like protect your peace. Do not share, like I share like some pieces, but like there's a reason that only people who I'm mutuals with actually know my real name. Y'all don't need to know nothing about me outside of the internet, because I hope to God I don't actually ever meet any of you guys, because I'm terrified. The way the parasocial relationships that like exist are so strange, and they're so obsessive and uncomfortable. And like you hear about it, but like big celebrities having people break into their like very well alarmed mansions. need you try to break into where I live. I'm not telling you what I live in or where I live. Don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's terrifying because again, I may be filled to the brim with unmitigated gall and audacity, but I'm still like just a person who, you know, my bits are squishy. I got the one life. Like I'd like to live it not in constant fear.
Yeah, 100%.
Not for the sake of fame. No, thank you.
No.
I'm happy to be anonymous the rest of my life and be boring.
Yeah.
And I want to thank both of y'all, since I think we're about at the end of our time. I want to thank both of y'all for being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate you asking us to be on here. It means a lot.
Y'all were to the two people. I was like, it's Black History Month. I know who to ask. Are there any parting things y'all would like to say, just in general, out into the world?
Oh, wow. What would you do if you had a whole platform to say whatever you want?
Have you had any water? Don't forget to take your medicine. Unclench your jaw, roll your shoulders back, and have a snack.
Thing that I would say is remember that sometimes the best answer is that you need to check in with yourself. It's very easy to get wound up and then respond, and sometimes the answer is you need to take a deep breath, click out of that app, click out of that conversation, block somebody, and go watch a porn parody or something. Or if you are somehow under the age that you should not be looking at that stuff, you should go find yourself a really cute, G-rated,
just
manga.
Spend an evening on Archive of Our Own. Or find some go through a rabbit hole in Tumblr, because apparently that's making a comeback.
Please don't let it. There's some things there that I don't want resurfacing.
Tumblr is a weird dark place.
It was. Well, on that note, I want to thank you both for coming. It has been a joy. And to everybody watching and listening, thank y'all very much for doing so. Y'all take care, and y'all take care. Bye, loves. Mwah. I mean, how do I end? There we go. Bye.
I'm gonna go to bed. It's like midnight here.
Yeah. Y'all have a good night. I can cut and edit this later. It's recording. I can cut it later. Thank y'all so much.
No, it's a pleasure. I'm gonna go to bed now.
Go to bed. It's like late. And go to bed, Kiki. You too, young lady. You work tomorrow.
Same.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this 5th episode of Talking Tea with Auntie, being a black woman in America. Whether you listened to this or watched it on YouTube or wherever, I am grateful that you are here, whether you found me organically or you followed me on over from TikTok. Thank you so much for being here. It really makes my day. Be sure to turn on that notification bell or whatever and subscribe to this channel. Also, as always, a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon who make this possible and allow me to make all this fantastic content. I really am grateful and honored that each and every one of them is there supporting me. A big thank you to my patrons who ask questions of our guests, C. Nikki and Matt Skaggs and Anonymous, for asking these questions allow us to have a fantastic conversation with my guests. If you would like to ask a question of my guests on the next episode of Talking Tea with Auntie, feel free to become a patron on Patreon for as low as $3 a month. Patreon.com/ShiningNathan. There you get to interact with me via DMs, messaging, and videos, and a lot more content, and also support the work I am doing. A special thank you to my guests, Kiki and Magpie, for agreeing to allow me to interview them for today. They were fantastic, and I am so grateful they did. If you would like to be a guest on Talking Tea with Auntie, feel free to email me at yourgayauntie@gmail.com. We haven't decided the topic of our next episode, so hang tight, and the next one will come out and the week after next on Monday, every other week. As always, I love you and take care, babies.